The candle had burned down to almost nothing, and I remember watching the wax pool because I could not make myself look at the man sitting on the other end of the bed. My wedding dress hung on a peg by the door. Below us, I could still hear the last of the guests. Buggy wheels on gravel, my mother's voice saying goodnight to her sisters. And I remember thinking one clear thought, clear as well water. I do not want this. Not tonight. Not this way. Not yet. Before I tell you what I did next and what it cost me for the next 40 years, I want you to understand that in my community, in that room, on that night, the word no was not supposed to exist. A wife did not say it. A bride had already given her answer at the front of the church that morning. So when I said it anyway, quietly, my hands folded in my lap, I set something in motion that I have carried every single day since. My name is Anna. I grew up Old Order Amish, and I was married in the autumn of 1962, when I was 20 years old. This is Hannah the Amish Girl, the channel where women like me finally say the things our communities spent a lifetime teaching us to swallow. If you believe a woman's no should have mattered, even then, even there, subscribe and like this video and tell me in the comments where you are watching from. I read every one. I need you to understand how a girl gets to that bed in the first place, because it did not begin with the wedding. It began years before in 100 small ways that all pointed in one direction. School ended for me after the 8th grade, the way it did for all of us. After that, my education was the kitchen, the garden, the wash line, the nursery. By 16, I was going to the Sunday singings. By 18, the mothers were watching me the way you watch bread that is nearly ready to come out of the oven. Jonas began driving me home from the singings in the spring. He was steady, older, a good farmer with his own land already promised to him. My father approved before Jonas ever spoke a word to me directly. That is how it worked. The families decided, and the young people were told it was their own choosing. Within the year, our wedding was published in church, and once a thing is published, there is no quiet way out of it. To pull back would shame 2 families, and shame was the heaviest thing a person could carry in our world. So I did not pull back. I told myself the unease in my stomach was only nerves. But it was not only nerves. I did not know Jonas. I mean, I truly did not know him. We had ridden in a buggy together perhaps 20 times, always with the whole of creation watching. We had never once been alone in a room with a door that closed. And on my wedding day, I understood, standing at the front of that church for 4 hours on a hard bench, that the very next private conversation we would ever have would be in the dark, in a bed, as husband and wife. That was the order of things. You married a stranger, and then you were expected to belong to him completely by nightfall. The wedding was on a Thursday in November after the harvest was in. I had been awake since 4 in the morning, helping to cook. More than 200 people came. The bishop preached on the duty of a wife, on submission, on the woman being fashioned for the man. I sat there in my new blue dress, and I heard every word, and something in me went very still and very cold, the way a pond goes still before the first ice. By the time the last dish was washed and the last lamp carried out, it was near midnight. Jonas and I went up the narrow stairs to the room that had been made ready for us. And there, in that small room, with the candle and the peg on the door and no lock anywhere, I sat down on the edge of the bed, and I could not move. Everything in me had drawn back like a hand from a hot stove. He was not unkind about it, not at first. He waited. And into that waiting, I said the thing no bride was meant to say. I said, not tonight. I said I did not know him yet. I said I was frightened, and I asked him to give me time. My voice was so quiet I was not sure he had heard me until I saw his face change in the candlelight. He did not shout. Jonas was not a shouting man. He simply looked at me for a long moment, and then he said something I have never forgotten. He said, "That is not yours to decide anymore." He turned away from me, and he slept, or pretended to, and I lay awake against the far edge of that mattress, as far from my own husband as the bed would allow, listening to the horses shift in the barn below, understanding that I had done something that could not be taken back. I had refused, and in our world, a refusal was not a private matter between two people. It was a crack in the whole foundation, and cracks were not permitted to stay hidden. For a few weeks, nothing was said out loud, but a marriage in an Amish community is not a private thing. It lives inside a house that is always full, inside a church district where everyone knows the rhythm of everyone else's life. When there was no announcement, no quiet blush from the new wife, no rounding of the belly by spring, the women began to notice. And the women always tell the men who need to be told. Here is what happened over the next 11 Sundays, and I cannot carry it in 20 minutes. There are things this recording cannot hold. The names, the counting, the drawer, the dress I kept for 27 years. 3 years ago I wrote it all down. The book is called The Sundays. The link is in the description and pinned in the first comment. What I can tell you is this: my no did not stay in that bedroom. It followed me down the stairs and out into the yard and into the church house. Jonas went to speak with the ministers, because that is what a troubled husband was counseled to do. And the counsel that came back was always the same: delivered gently, delivered with scripture, delivered by men, and by older women who truly believed they were saving my soul. A wife has no authority over her own body. That was not cruelty to them. That was the plain reading of things, the water they had all swum in their whole lives. I want to be careful here because it would be easy to make Jonas the villain of this story, and he was not. He was a young man who had been handed a set of rules the same as I had, who had been told since he was a boy what a marriage was owed to him, and who genuinely could not understand why the wife God had given him would deny him what every teaching promised. He was as trapped in that system as I was. We were two people standing on opposite sides of a wall that neither of us had built and neither of us knew how to climb. I think of my friend Maddie, who married 2 years before I did. Maddie had felt the same cold stillness I felt, and Maddie had said her yes anyway and swallowed it, and gone quiet for the rest of her life. We spoke of it only once, years later, over a basket of mending, in voices barely above breathing. She told me she had envied me. She said, "At least you knew what you wanted, even if wanting it broke you." I have thought about that sentence for 40 years. At least you knew what you wanted, even if wanting it broke you. Because it did break something, not all at once. It broke slowly, the way a field goes to ruin one season at a time when no one tends it. I became known in a way a woman never wanted to be known. Difficult, proud, and pride, hochmut, was the deadliest sin we had. To want something for yourself, to place your own comfort or your own heart above the order of the family and the church, that was the very root of pride. So my no was not heard as fear or as a plea for time. It was heard as pride, and a proud woman had to be brought low for her own sake, so that her soul might be saved. The bringing low was quiet. It was never a raised hand. It was a mother-in-law's silence at the table. It was the other women pausing just slightly when I came into the room at a quilting. It was being passed over when the important tasks were handed out. It was my own mother who loved me, telling me with tears in her eyes to soften, to yield, to be a good wife because she could not bear to watch what disobedience would cost her daughter. Everyone who pressed on me believed they were doing it out of love. That is the part that took me the longest to understand, and the part that still sits heaviest. Jonas and I did build a life, I want to say that plainly, because it is true. In time there were children. There were seasons where the two of us reached some fragile peace, where he was tender and I was grateful, where we sat on the porch in the evening and did not speak of the thing that lay under everything, but the crack never healed. It only grew a skin over the top of it. And on the hard nights, the thing that had been decided that first night, that my body was not mine to decide about, sat in the room with us like a third person who never left. For 40 years I stayed. I want you to hear that, because when people learn a woman was unhappy, they ask why she did not simply go. In my world there was no simply. To leave was to be shunned. To be shunned was to lose your parents, your children, your table, your church, your entire self, everyone you had ever loved cut away in a single stroke, treated as though you had died. So I did not leave for a very long time. I made myself small enough to fit inside the life I had. That is its own kind of leaving, the kind that happens on the inside where no one can see it. I kept the wedding dress for 27 years, folded in a drawer. I could not have told you then why. I understand it now. When I finally did leave, I was past 60. My children were grown. Jonas had passed, and I walked out of the only world I had ever known with almost nothing but the clothes I wore and the weight of 40 years. The shunning came anyway, even then, even old, even widowed. Doors that had been open to me my whole life closed. But I will tell you something strange. For the first time since I was 20 years old, when I lay down at night, the bed was mine. The no I had said at 20, the one I paid for across 4 decades, I finally got to keep. In the years since, sitting across from a counselor in a plain office, I learned words I had never once heard spoken aloud in my community. Consent, autonomy, the idea that a woman's body belongs to the woman herself, and that this is not sin and not pride, but simply the truth. When she first said the word consent to me and explained what it meant, I wept because I was more than 60 years old before anyone had ever told me that the thing I had reached for at 20 had a name, and that reaching for it had not made me wicked. I do not tell this story to make you hate the people who raised me. They gave me real things. They gave me a faith I have had to rebuild, but did not throw away. They gave me a community that showed up for every birth and every burial. They gave me hands that know how to work and a spine that knows how to endure. But there is no scripture in any language that makes a woman's no into a sin. There is no God I believe in now who fashioned a woman's body and then commanded her to have no say over it. The silence around that, the certainty that my refusal was pride, and not a person asking to be known first, that is the thing that cost me 40 years. If you were ever taught that your yielding was holiness and your wanting was pride, I see you. If you ever said no or wished you could and paid for it in ways no one else could see, I see you too. Your no mattered. It mattered then, even when no one in your world would call it by its right name. And if no one ever told you that, I am telling you now. The Sundays. What 20 minutes cannot hold. The link is in the description and pinned in the first comment. Tell me below what part of this stayed with you. And if you want to keep hearing the truth from behind the prayer cap, subscribe to Hannah, the Amish girl. The morning is yours if you decide it is.